I was, leading up to this trip, told the answer is no, you should not be doing this.
Going down the Tugela Falls, there are bolts if you want to abseil down, and they set off to do this portion of the trip.
I guess you could call it like an anxiety attack. It's just like I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to cry and I wanted to go home, but I wanted to finish, and my partner's down there screaming up at me and doesn't know what's going on. I lean over to clip him into where I am, and I realized he has climbed the entire rope without being attached to anything. Okay, I'm done. This is not safe anymore.
Every day across South Africa, brave men and women risk everything when disaster strikes.
From floods to fires, mountains to highways, these are the real stories of survival and courage. I'm Dineo Mphahlele.
And I'm Natarah Nadesan.
This is SA Rescue Out Alive, an East Coast Radio podcast.
In early 2024, two young adventure seekers find themselves between a rock and a hard place. Perched on a grassy ledge of one of the tallest waterfalls in the world, the 28-year-old woman and 29-year-old man are preparing to make their bed for the night after a day spent trying to abseil the rock face. Frustrated and tired, they set their sights on another attempt in the morning. But will it all go according to plan? The Tugela Falls is one of the tallest waterfalls in the world, right up there with Venezuela's Angel Falls. Situated in the Royal Natal National Park in the majestic Drakensberg's amphitheatre. It's truly a natural wonder. Its total height of 947 meters is made up of 5 cascading drops. The waterfall is part of the upper course of KwaZulu-Natal's largest river, the Tugela River, which begins in the Mo'o Sources and ends in the Indian Ocean. Mo'o Sources is also from where the Orange River, South Africa's longest, starts its journey to the Atlantic Ocean on the country's west coast. In late February 2024, this formative part of the Northern Drakensberg would also be the starting line of an ambitious quest, a more than 500-kilometer traverse of the Tugela River. It's an adventure known as Source to Sea. It's the last weekend of February in 2024. Some members of the Mountain Club of South Africa are hanging out in a popular outdoor adventure spot. They are enjoying a recreational weekend away in the climbing wonderland of Swinburne, a small village in the Free State province, located about halfway between Johannesburg and Durban. Gavin Robenheimer is part of the group at Swinburne. He's a mountain rescuer you might have heard in episode 1 of SA Rescue Out Alive. As Gavin and his colleagues enjoy the boulders of Swinburne, their attention is suddenly turned elsewhere.
My colleague, who's also involved in mountain rescue, said, he's just had this call from the Provincial Health Operations Centre, plus other people, saying that there are 2 people possibly stuck on the Tugela Falls in the amphitheatre area of the Northern Drakensberg. Now, what these 2 individuals were trying to do is they wanted to go along the Tugela River from source to sea. And as I understand, they were also kayakers. They could paddle down rivers, but if you do the Tugela Falls, there's a big waterfall, and in order to go from source to sea, would have to theoretically go down the waterfall.
The 2 adventurers have been stuck on the waterfall for 2 weekend nights. Everything has gone wrong. Early on Monday morning, a rescue team sets off to evacuate them. At the top of the waterfall, the rescue team contacts the stranded duo to let them know they've arrived and are coming down to get them. They're all set to start lowering a rescuer to locate the pair but it's quite misty. But Gavin and his team have a good sense of where they may be.
They turned out to be about 140 meters down, and then you got the rushing waterfall next to you, so we couldn't see them. And what didn't work, but could have if it wasn't misty, is that we had a drone with. And to send a drone down to see where they are, so you get a good idea. But the drone wasn't going to be working in the misty conditions like that. So we had to go and do it blind per se, but you have a good idea who they're going to be. They're not going to be too far off.
The rescuers meet up with the first abseiler. He has been trying to climb back up a pitch. The rescuers help him the rest of the way up. His partner below is waiting for her turn to be rescued.
I did climb up my turn. I think I climbed one more pitch to where they met me. And then I started cleaning up the mess. And then, we have been getting drizzled on. We are a bit wet. And I didn't know how long the rescue was going to take, because I know that now we're technically safe, but hours can set in terms of like hypothermia. And I was starting to actually get cold. I think the adrenaline had worn off. I started taping emergency blanket to myself because my friend had the jacket and things like that. So I just wrapped the blanket around myself, or like around my legs, to keep myself warm.
So who are these two adventure seekers, and how exactly did they end up stuck on Africa's tallest waterfall? Before you can abseil down the Tugela Falls, you need to get to the top of its drop. Getting to this spot takes a hike up to the Drakensberg amphitheater. It's a popular trail whose final steep ascent is aided by a set of famous chain ladders mounted onto the rock face. It's a literal stairway to heavenly views. Once at the top of the escarpment, most hikers spend some time taking in the magnificence of the valleys, gorges, and the leaping waters of the falls. Some stay overnight, mainly to witness what many have described as a simply glorious sunrise. But on this last weekend in February 2024, this pair of young adventurers have other plans. We'll call them Shannon and Brian for anonymity. Here's Shannon.
There were a group of us, two young, keen river guides who were keen to conquer the world and see and get a message across around river health and the sustainability of the adventure industry in terms of the excess and all the things that we use around rivers that aren't necessarily good for the health of the river. So we set out to do a source to sea expedition of the Tugela River, which would mean hiking up to the source of where the Tugela River starts in the Drakensberg Mountains, and then following that river down on the course of where the river is to a point where we could put in our boats where the water was high enough, and then we would continue to paddle until we reached the ocean.
Shannon and Brian are part of a group that is fresh from a 2-month river expedition. Shannon says they had spent several weeks on a similar mission on the K and Mzimvubu rivers in the Eastern Cape. It doubled as a sustainability and environmental campaign. One of the things they did is source food only from the communities the rivers ran through. Shannon and her fellow adventurers would take the same approach for the Tugela expedition.
Some people heard about what we were going to be doing and wanted to get involved with testing the water. So then that made the expedition more meaningful. It wasn't just a bunch of nutters getting on the river and playing around and going for fun. It meant that they could, get some actual data and something of value out of this that could be published and used in some way. So we were given test kits and charts and things to do so that we would be checking the water source from the source all the way to the ocean at different points, and where different communities that we passed, how that changed the things. So we were testing things like the life in the water, like the invertebrates that are very sensitive to pollution. We were testing things like E. coli, all different things. And when I had told a friend of mine what I was going to be doing, I said, I'm doing the source to sea. And he just joked and he laughed at me and he said, Yeah, well, it's not the true source to see if you leave out Tugela Falls. That was, I guess, where the bug bit, something said something in me, and I really took it on seriously.
Shannon accepts the challenge. Such an epic achievement would be a serious notch-up and feather in her adventure cap.
In terms of my reasoning and my drive to do this expedition, that's exactly what I was looking for, and finding access to a world, or finding mentors who could mentor me into a world of real adventure, where I can actually go on real expeditions and say, I understand what I'm doing and I know what an expedition means. This was just an opportunity that, although I felt wasn't necessarily planned in the right way, I couldn't let this opportunity pass, because I knew that this would teach me things that no one had been able to teach me before.
It would also land Shannon and her partner Brian in a very small pool of canyoners who've conquered the Tugela Falls. Only a handful of people have successfully descended the Tugela Falls. The most recent and well-documented abseil was completed 3 years before Shannon and Brian's attempt. A group of rock climbers and canyoners with a world of experience went down the falls in April 2021. They made sure to cover as many bases as possible, as they knew the risks all too well. In a blog post detailing their descent, one of the party, Neil Marget, writes that they had started training in 2019 with a plan to climb the following year. But the COVID pandemic put everything on pause. On the day they finally abseiled, they had some close encounters on that long way down. In a misstep that involved a loose flake, Neil described having various scenarios playing out in his head as he contemplated how to make it past the obstacle alive. Experience got him over the hurdle. By dusk, the group of abseilers were in the gorge and passed through the tunnel to their finish line. After doing some research, Shannon believes she has it in her to also make it all the way down Africa's tallest waterfall.
Everyone advised that it was a bad idea, that you can do this one day, but it's just to try and fit this into your Source to Sea mission right now, it's just not going to work. It's not safe. There's special things that need to be put in place for this to be viable.
Refusing to be deterred, Shannon looks elsewhere for guidance. She gets in touch with another climber who is most familiar with the Tugela Falls terrain.
There was, I guess, 2 other groups who had done the falls. There was a foreign group who had kind of just gone in gung-ho and did what they did, but they were very experienced in terms of doing big waterfalls. But then I reached out to the local guy who is very pro-bolting and tries to keep these types of adventures safe for people who actually want to do them. And I spoke to him about it, and he was so generous and so kind and encouraging. I think by then he knew that I was going to do it. I sat on a Zoom meeting with him, and we went over all the topos, and he drew out maps for me and explained to me each pitch, how long it was and where the stances were and kind of what gear they used. And when I asked about a certain technique in terms of retrieving the rope, he said, I'm not teaching you anything about that you don't know. Do what you know and only do that. I'm not going to tell you what we did, because I don't want to be responsible for telling you this was the best way to do it. So if you say you know how to do it the way you know how.
But just how prepared are Shannon and Brian? This lofty endeavor requires one not just to be in great physical form, but to be mentally ready too.
The headspace of the group was not in a good place.
Having come straight from a lengthy river rafting trip, fatigue is setting in and things aren't falling into place.
We didn't get the gear in time to do it at the beginning of our Source to Sea mission, so only when we got off the river, that was when the gear arrived. It got posted to the middle of nowhere in some little place in KZN, and now we just had a box of ropes and melons and hard gear, heavy metal and very thick, hard, heavy static ropes. And by then, our trip leader on the river had injured himself.
Nonetheless, the group sets off on their Source to Sea expedition. It takes them quite some time to follow the course of the Tugela River from its headwaters at Mount Sources to the top of the waterfall. They're carrying what Shannon estimates to be 12 kilograms of heavy climbing and abseiling gear on their backs.
We were following the river, which meant we were following extreme ridge lines that were very steep and very challenging and all off trail, so it was very taxing. At the bottom, it was all rocky water, so we were basically going through bouldery water flowing river sections and then having to climb up each tier. So one of us would climb up and put down a short rope. We had a short rope as well. Pull up bags, and then we would kind of scramble up each tier until we got into the mountain. And then we followed a ridge line, which was just off trail, really long grass, really thick, very narrow, very completely steep. At times I had my backpack behind me and I was almost vertical in terms of how steep it was.
Brian will be doing the waterfall abseil with Shannon because her original partner was injured. But is the young man up to the task?
He was so lovely because he knew how important this mission was for me. But he was not experienced. He had never been on a rope before, let alone understanding any sort of technical skill or technique that would need to help us along the way. So, leading up to it, I don't know why there was a rush in terms of the pressure from the rest of the team, of the group. So I tried my best to kind of remove us from that and go through as much as I could in terms of I would teach a certain technique and would go over it. I would show him the gear and say, this is what we're going to be doing. A big part of what had happened was my partner was very inexperienced in carrying heavy gear and a full backpack of things. So part of the gear split was the food, and he didn't pack any food. So by the time we got to the top of the falls where we were meant to start our mission, we had already spent 2 nights sleeping on the mountain with no food. I then went up to the nearest restaurant, and I remember I ordered a bunch of eggs. And I asked, can you just boil these eggs? And I'll just buy like a bunch of boiled eggs and we should be okay. I think we had 1 apple. In 2 days, we had like a snack of an apple, and we had a jar, like 250 ml jar of nuts that we were like rationing out.
Shannon and Brian have arrived at the Tugela Falls where they start their abseil.
And then when we got to the top of Tugela Falls, a storm hit and it started raining. So luckily that beautiful hut was there, and the storm waited for us to get there before it completely opened up on us. So we were very grateful for that. I think the elements and the mountains were definitely on our side for that time. So it just meant that we had to wait another night, which meant another day without food before we even started the mission. My partner had no warm clothes. He didn't have a sleeping bag. So we were sharing everything that I had. I had my sleeping bag and my warm clothes. So I would give him the rain jacket and I would wear the rain pants. And then when we got cold, we would switch, and I would give him the pants and I would wear like a base layer and the jacket. So I would like wrap the sleeping bag around us and try to keep us warm.
As Shannon and Brian take shelter from the storm, their food needs are somewhat met. A group of friendly mountain shepherds offer them a loaf of bread. They also score 2 chocolate muffins, another apple, a banana, and a piece of French cheese from a group of hikers. Shannon reckons it's enough to ration over a couple more days. They coil their 100-meter static rope into a sleeping mat on the hut floor and huddle together to keep warm ahead of the abseil in a few hours.
That's kind of what seemed to be the theme. We would like hit an all-time low and be like exhausted, we're tired, we're hungry. And then a little pick-me-up would happen, like this gift of food. And it would completely blur the reality, and we would be like, we're totally fine now, we can keep going. So now that we had this new sourced stock of food, we decided, well, let's go. The sun is clearing out tomorrow. And I had checked the weather before we started hiking, but my phone had actually got smashed on the hike up. I was already using like a burner phone because my real phone went missing on the river. So I had bought like a quick at one of these like cheap cell phone shops, anything. I said anything that can have WhatsApp and Google Maps, but that also smashed on the way up. I think all the signs were trying to tell us not to go on this mission. So I knew there was a weather window in terms of, I think we can get this done if we can get it done in 2 days. We have 2 days to get down the falls, and then the weather's coming in. We woke up very early before sunrise. I knew conceptually what I was doing, but I had never done something like this, and I had never been in charge of something like this. I always had someone else who was more experienced of me to double check me or be like, that's maybe not going to work so well, let's rather do this.
Shannon and Brian soak in every sight and sensation nature has to offer.
As we were dropping off the first pitch, the sun started to rise, and I started to see this orange glow coming over the mountains. We could kind of see the environment that we were just about to drop into, and the falls were shining in the light, and we decided, we don't know what the outcome is of this. So before we actually hopped on, we got off the rope and we went for a quick skinny dip at the top of the falls, and we jumped in just to get our senses alive and understand that we're connecting with this river. This is what the mission is.
Shannon has the theoretical map of how this abseil can be tackled, but her partner is completely venturing into uncharted waters.
He went down first, and it took me a while at the first vault to kind of get my rhythm of what I was doing. Rope management, when you've got that much rope that's that heavy, becomes challenging. So I was trying my best to get the system right, and it took me way too long. And people started to reach the top of the falls because a lot of people hike up there for the day, or they'll start earlier because it's a center point for a lot of different things that people are doing. And we wanted to be out of sight by the time people started to arrive. And I remember just before we dropped down the first pitch, I set up the abseil, and he would go down first because I would always have to be left behind to clean up and then come down safely. So he was also very brave in the sense of knowing that he would have to be going down first each pitch of the way, which would mean it was left up to him to find the bolts of where the anchors were. As far as I knew, it was pretty straightforward. I explained to him how far it should be, and it should be a bit to the left or right. But I would not be able to observe if he was clipped in safely.
As Shannon and Brian start their descent, at Swinburne, mountain rescuer Gavin Robenheimer and his colleagues are having a relaxing weekend of rock climbing. The meetup is about to have a new agenda item added.
I was very hard on myself because I was taking too long, and I knew it was because I was afraid. I was just too afraid to do the next step. I beat myself up a lot about that. We went to the next pitch fine. It took a lot longer just because, these systems take long. We got to the next one, and we did setup, did our switch, did all what we needed to do, and we did the next pitch. But because the ropes are so long, they tend to get stuck when pulling them. And because I had never dealt with a rope getting stuck before, I didn't understand what I was dealing with. I didn't know, is this rope heavy and you just need to pull harder because it's a heavy rope, or is it actually stuck? So I would often have to go up and sort the problem out and then come down again. We got stuck at one of the pitches, and we were so far apart that communication wasn't there. We didn't have walkie-talkies. So we were relying on trying to scream and do our signals. None of us were moving for no good reason. I then put up a hauling system to try and haul the rope up because I suspected it had just gotten stuck on something, and that's why it was locking off. And eventually, I think through me pulling, he noticed that this thing was stuck and undid it. So then that meant that I was able to continue further. We then went further, and by me trying to pull the rope actually did get stuck. And it was quite a hardcore scenario.
Shannon can't remember exactly when she makes the call, alerting officials about their position, but Gavin does.
That Saturday afternoon, that's when they've made their first call to say that things weren't going well. And I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but they might need to be rescued. And then they later on phoned to say, no, they've sorted out whatever their problem was, they've sorted it out and they're continuing down the waterfall. And my colleague who was really dealing with them on the phone still said to me, this problem isn't going to go away. We're going to get another call. I've got this feeling. And we carried on our climbing weekend at Swinburne.
It's starting to get dark. Having spent most of the day on the rock face and having covered little ground, Shannon and Brian decide they can't go any further. They climb up a few meters to reach a grassy ledge where they'll spend the night. And much to their joy, there's a pool.
I mean, this is as big as a piece of land we've seen in a long time. There's no problem. And this is now we're on the falls, which means the water is running, the water is loud. There's actually a big pool there on that ledge as well, which meant we could have a nice swim. And I don't know why we were always wanting to swim. I think we were just, off the river. So water was life for us. Even though it was freezing cold, nighttime mountains, we thought, the solution is to swim. From afar, it looks like a friendly grassy ledge, but the reality is it is on the edge of a cliff. So it is at quite a steep angle. It's not even. We found a spot in between two giant tufts of grass that held us perfectly. We needed those tufts of grass to hold us because we were too far away from where the rope was rigged to clip into the rope. It was even enough to not slide off the edge of the mountain, but we were sleeping at quite a steep angle and were definitely reliant on the features of the grass holding us in place while we were sleeping. And it was cold. We were right next to water and the weather was coming in the next day. I had an emergency blanket with me and I had a lot of tape, and I taped this emergency blanket around us. I wrapped my one sleeping bag around us and then I covered us in an emergency bag and I taped it to us just to kind of keep us not nestled together. That night was tough. I remember being very hungry and very tired.
Shannon and Brian wake up early, buoyed by the hope of a new day and the chance to eat the next ration of their snacks. Will it all sustain them on the arduous journey further down the waterfall? Would it help bring the goal within reach? Only time will tell.
The sun has come, the dark of the night is gone. We're going to be okay. We've got a piece of food and let's have a quick dip and get our senses fresh. And we're feeling alive and vitalized again and ready to go. And that would have really been the decision to call of okay, we made it through the night. This is not going so well. We don't have a lot of time or food left. Let's call it. But we were feeling fresh and ready to go.
But once they resumed their abseil, things started falling apart again.
And then we started again. As before, things just were taking too long. Everything. The rope was getting stuck. Things were getting... communication was off, and my friend would get scared and clip into something or tie a knot or untie something that I had tied. And I was afraid. I want to reiterate, I was also unsure and afraid. And, going that long without food, it's really difficult. I was just trying to keep us alive. Are we following all the protocol that makes sure we're safe? Which then slowed things down a lot because I needed to make sure that we were attached at all times.
Several meters above, a pair of eyes had been watching them.
There was someone at the top of the falls who had been watching us, and he was aware that something was not going well. He saw us struggling the night we decided to spend on the ledge, where he had called out to us kind of when the sun was going down, and he said, "Are you guys stuck? Are you okay?" And I was screaming out to him, "Don't worry about it. Just forget it. Everything's fine." I think it was a hiker who had spotted us and was worried about us and wanted to keep an eye on us. And it was so sweet, you know. It made me feel like, okay, I'm not going to fall off the edge of the mountain and no one's going to know about it. And then when I woke up the next morning and we were ready to go and we started rigging, he was still at the top there. And he said, you're still there? And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this human? Like, yes, we're okay. We made it and we're going to keep going. And he was like, do you want me to call anyone? And I was like, no, we're totally fine. We know what we're doing. We're okay. We're not in danger. We're just going slow. And that was a real guardian angel.
The stranger at the top is about to become a lifeline. Down the waterfall, the minutes and hours have been going by slowly. Shannon describes it as a long, tough and challenging day. They are descending a longer and more complex section of the rock face. Soon, they'll have to confront the free-hanging part of the waterfall.
This was the last time that we were going to have any sort of ground underneath our feet. After that, we were going to be free hanging on a rope, which meant we had to have our systems down because we didn't have time to mess around, because you can't hang endlessly in a harness for 2 days. I couldn't go anywhere, and I just heard my partner at the bottom there just like screaming up to me like, ah. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if he was unsafe or if he was just frustrated that I wasn't coming down, and I was trying my best to scream to him like, unclip the rope, I can't get on the rope. I wanted to send a note down the rope, like I was trying my best to just get some sort of communication down to him, but you know, the piece of paper would just like tear through the rope and the rope wouldn't go down anyway, like it was very hard. And then I wanted to send a carabiner down with a note on it, but you know, there was so much grass along the way, it just got stuck and it wasn't working.
Night is falling. That jolt of new day hope she and Brian had felt in the morning fades into frustration, and now it's no longer their mission hanging in the balance, it's their safety.
My safety tether had been extra piece of tat, which had been tied closed. So it was one long piece of tat that had been tied into a sling with a tape knot. And because of all the rushing before and everything like that, I maybe didn't check that one. We had a bunch of different ones tied, and I was pretty certain, I mean, we had been hanging on them for like a day now, so that one was good. But I don't know how this one came loose, but I stepped back almost off the ledge that I kind of was on, and my tether just disappeared in front of me, and I realized I wasn't attached to anything for hours. I was just like hanging around on the edge at night in the wet, kind of fumbling around trying to build the system, and I wasn't actually attached to anything. And when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Shannon and Brian have reached the end of their tether. It begins to sink in for Shannon as she hangs unsecured some way down Africa's tallest waterfall.
I basically had a little bit of, I guess you could call it like an anxiety attack, where I was just like, I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to cry and I wanted to go home, but I wanted to finish, and my partner's down there screaming up at me and doesn't know what's going on.
They need to get off the mountain. And almost serendipitously, the man at the top of the falls pops his head over again.
This man sees my head torch and he shouts down to me, are you really still okay? Because it looks like you've been there for a while. But he's like, you know, screaming from the top of the falls, and I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. Like, we're done. We need help. And he's like, who do I contact? And he's trying to, you know, and I'm trying to scream up at him, like, contact my friend. This is his Instagram handle. I'm like screaming out, spelling his Instagram handle, like RO #_ and he gets it, and then he screams down to me and he says, his profile is on private.
The social media avenue is a dead end. The man at the top is unable to send an SOS to Shannon's friend because of the locked profile. With a pit in her stomach, Shannon knows they'll need to contact mountain rescue. The person who had planted the idea of the waterfall abseil in her head had also told her that Gavin Robenheimer was the go-to person if she got into trouble on the mountain. Shannon had then shared Gavin's number with some of her family in case of emergency.
I was, leading up to this trip, told the answer is no, you should not be doing this. So I was already feeling ashamed and nervous to contact rescue because I knew that we had not gotten permission. People did not want us to be doing this. That was a whole psychological thing that will come later in terms of reflecting on what actually happened there and why I decided to do it anyway. But I remember saying to my friend who gave me Gavin's number, and he said, you can't make this other people's problem. You can't do this. And I said something along the lines of, I have huge respect for mountain rescue, but part of the reason of why they exist is for people who are pushing their limits in the mountains. And if they need help, they need to be able to call on help. But part of it is to be able to push our limits and see how far we can go, knowing that I guess there is someone on the other side if we get into a tricky situation. And that was, I guess, not taken so well. I don't know. But I guess the way that it was seen was that I was like, I'm going to do what I want and someone else must fix it. So I was already feeling really uncomfortable about contacting rescue, but I knew I had to face the music in terms of we're not in control anymore. And I remembered that the weather was coming in. This now it was starting to drizzle and the clouds were coming.
Around this time, Shannon remembers that they have taken an SOS satellite communicator with them. The plan had been for the device to be with Brian because he always descended first. But this time, for some reason, they had swapped backpacks. Shannon could call for help herself.
So that's when I start typing out my SOS message, which is going to be sent to my mother and our friend who's supposed to be waiting at the bottom. And I typed this out one letter at a time. And I wanted to get the message across that we weren't about to die, that we were safe. So I spent forever, one letter at a time, typing out a beautifully articulated message saying, we're okay, don't stress, we need to get out, the weather's coming in, please can you help us, but we're okay. I typed that message out about 3 or 4 times, and for some reason it kept resetting. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I eventually ended up just sending help.
Shannon and Brian have also not seen each other in a while. Shannon is panicking. Brian is further down and has been waiting for Shannon to descend. He doesn't know that she has become stuck and has also lost her tether. After a few hours of hopelessness, Shannon feels the rope moving. Her abseiling partner has found a way back up to her, but she's about to make a heart-stopping realization.
I kind of lean over to clip him into where I am, and I realized he has climbed the entire rope without being attached to anything. Which meant if he let go, he would have just fallen. We gave each other a big hug, and I looked at him and I said, I'm done. I'm calling rescue, we're done. And then my friend decides to tell me he's got a bit of battery on his phone, which I didn't even know he had a phone this whole time. So he was saving it for when we really needed it. He didn't want to tell anyone. So that was when we actually got voice contact with the other side.
Sometime on the Sunday afternoon, inevitably we got another call saying we are definitely stuck now. But we're okay. We're not injured or anything, but they can't pull their ropes down. In order to abseil down a waterfall like that, you've got to take long ropes with you, but you still have to, you rig it up, it's a standard way, you rig it up through bolted anchor points and you pull one side of these double ropes and you get your ropes back, and then you do another section and another section. You kind of leapfrog your way down. But their ropes were stuck in the anchor points way above them, and they couldn't, no matter how hard they pulled, they couldn't get these ropes.
Mountain rescuer Gavin Robenheimer and his colleagues are winding down their climbing weekend in Swinburne, nearly 100 kilometers away. Their focus is now fully turning to the rescue that needs to be carried out at Tugela Falls. They speak to Shannon and Brian on the secret phone Brian has just produced, as the rescuers try to assess the situation the two are in and what they can and can't do at this point. The back and forth sees Shannon reaching the depths of desperation.
As far as I understood, rescue was a bit apprehensive as to like in how much danger we were. I think they were like, oh, it's been a bit of an epic, but you guys, you just need to make sure that you're safe and that you sheltered and you can carry on. And I was saying like, I don't think you guys realized when the last time we had a real meal. Because I just kept saying fatigue, we're too tired to carry on. And they were saying being tired is not a reason to stop. You have to continue down because that's, you're not in the middle, but you know, like to come up takes just as much effort as to go down. Like you need to finish what you're doing. You either need to go up or go down. And I was saying like, we can't, like the reserve is finished. There's nothing left anymore. We need help and we need to get off this mountain.
On their end, Gavin and his colleagues have analyzed the situation and conclude that Shannon and Brian can hang on for another couple of hours. They're not going to rush to pluck them off the mountain.
By the way, many of the rescue team were sitting at Swinburne doing their rock climbing at the time. But we established that they needed our help, but they could spend another night out on the mountain. It was in good weather, but they were just sitting in a precarious position, although tied on, and we could fetch them on the Monday morning, which gave us time to assemble a team and to hike up and to go and fetch them. If we had have left immediately, for instance, we would have been hiking in the dark and trying to rig up ropes in the dark, which is just dangerous. There's no need for it. They're not in danger, why endanger ourselves? So that was the idea.
Gavin and co check with the pair if they will be okay for a night. Shannon tells them they will manage. In the morning, they'll need to climb back up a pitch or two on their own to make the rescue quicker.
I think, you know, yes, like a desperate side of me would have liked them to drop what they were doing and not that they didn't, but, you know, like that some knight in shining armor was just going to pitch up and pluck me off the mountain and take me to a hot bath and a burger.
Shannon and Brian muster a little bit more strength to climb back up a few meters. There, they retreat to an area of the waterfall they've identified as the best possible spot to wait out not only the hours until help arrives, but a possible storm, Shannon is worried, is on the way.
So I rigged up something really cool where our backpacks were hanging on the rope because, you know, we had been wearing these heavy packs the whole time. So it was really nice to just be able to take the packs off and not think about that anymore. And I rigged a system that we were kind of on a ledge. I want to say it was about 0.5 meter wide at, I don't know how many degrees of an angle. Because it was raining and loose, it was half disintegrating below us. Every movement where your foot slips, half of it kind of chips away and disappears under you. So we kind of managed to curl up in a ball of having our feet wedged under our bums to give us support. And I had, you know, rigged us so that we were attached to the rope so that we weren't obviously relying on ourselves to keep us on the ledge, so that if we were to have to hang, we would be hanging on the rope. And I did the same thing where I wrapped us up in whatever I had, you know, one beanie, he took a buff, one pants for me, one jacket for him, sleeping bag. I pulled out my sleeping bag, taped the sleeping bag around us because, you know, it's an awkward position. So every time someone moves, it slides off of you, and then taped whatever shredded pieces of safety emergency blanket I had left, and I taped that around us and held on, and then we decided, okay, this is our spot for the night. We're going to be okay. it was such a beautiful setting. I guess that was when the reality of where we were hit, because I wasn't so focused on the rope in front of me. I could now look at my surroundings, and I had this, this amphitheater of mountains surrounding me, and the weather was coming in. So there were these clouds rolling in the most surreal, dramatic way. When I say rolling, I mean literally like a dragon snake of clouds rolling in the mountains, and you can see the lightning in the mountains. So the sky is flashing these different colors, and it was just like such an incredible experience to be observing. But I knew, okay, well, I really hope the storm doesn't hit while we're on this ledge, because one, this ledge is going to disintegrate, and two, I don't think we can make it through the night.
That Sunday night, Gavin and his colleagues jumped from a fun, carefree weekend spent connecting and climbing in Swinburne to carefully planning and preparing a rescue mission. Gavin assembles a strong contingent of rescue personnel.
The 12 members going with us were needed because you've got to carry all this equipment, particularly the long ropes, to the top of the Tugela Falls, and then to get them back, you've got to do what's called a pick-off rescue. So you lower one rescue member down to wherever they are, you clip the person on who has to be rescued, you unclip them off the mountain, and then a team has to haul two people up the mountain, it requires lots of pulleys and rope and manpower to haul. And we expected to haul 200 meters. We weren't exactly sure where they were, and so we went in with a lot of equipment in order to extract them.
As they sit on their crumbly bed for the night taking stock, Shannon and Brian seek some small comforts. Brian gathers some moss, while Shannon looks to the heavens.
My friend, he is a smoker, but obviously at this point hadn't smoked anything in a while. He had no tobacco left, so he found some moss and grass on the edge and had a piece of something that he rolled it into and lit up some Tugela smoke of whatever that was of plants that he found growing on the edge of the rock. And we said cheers. And I let him fall asleep because obviously he was shattered, but I wasn't going to sleep that night. And I just prayed. And I don't think I've ever prayed like that in my life, but I prayed for, I don't know what the time was when we set up until we reached the next morning. But I just prayed consistently for hours, like, please, dear God, let it not rain. Please, dear God, let it not rain. Please, dear God. I just said that for hours on end. That was my mantra for the night. And I was just having this dual experience of just like extreme fear that it was going to start raining hard, but also just with this incredible view in front of me of being like, I can't actually believe where I am right now. And so grateful for the experience and so grateful for being alive and where I am. The storm did not come. The clouds came and they danced and they rolled around us and they would swoop in and then they would move away and then they would come back and then they would come over and leave. So the whole time the elements were playing with us from when we started hiking up in the most, right on the edge of keeping it interesting and scary, but still keeping us safe. So I was very grateful to Mother Nature for being on our side while still trying to teach us a lesson.
The 12-strong rescue crew head out to the Royal Natal Park before dawn. Some driving from Durban and others from Pietermaritzburg. They arrived at the Sentinel car park and make the 2-hour hike up to the top of the waterfall. They need another hour to get the rescue equipment and anchor points in order. Down the waterfall, Shannon, who hasn't slept a wink, is raring to go.
I am on a high. I know it is only a matter of hours before we get out of here. I wake up my friend. We say, okay, we've got to start making our way up this last section of rope. We can only make it up one more pitch because that's the last rig on that rope. You can't climb something that's not there. He starts making his way up. Again, it's a very long process because I'm trying to get across to him the actual way to climb a rope where you're actually attached. And he starts climbing and making his way.
At the top of the waterfall, the rescue team contact the stranded duo to let them know they are here and coming down to get them. They're all set to start lowering a rescuer to locate the pair, but it's quite misty. But Gavin says they had a good sense of where they may be. It's on point.
They turned out to be about 140 meters down, and then you got the rushing waterfall next to you, so we couldn't see them. And what didn't work, but could have if it wasn't misty, is that we had a drone with. And to send a drone down to see where they are, so you get a good idea. But the drone wasn't going to be working in the misty conditions like that. So we had to go and do it blind per se, but you have a good idea who they're going to be. They're not going to be too far off.
The rescuers meet Brian first while he was trying to climb back up a pitch. They help him the rest of the way up. Below, Shannon waits for her turn to be rescued.
I did climb up my turn. I think I climbed one more pitch to where they met me. And then I started cleaning up the mess. And then, we have been getting drizzled on. We are a bit wet. And I didn't know how long the rescue was going to take, because I know that rescue, now we're technically safe, but hours can set in terms of like hypothermia. And I was starting to actually get cold. I think the adrenaline had worn off. I started taping emergency blanket to myself because my friend had the jacket and things like that. So I just wrapped the blanket around myself, or like around my legs, to keep myself warm. I didn't want them to meet me in a hypothermic state and make it more dramatic than it needed to be. I heard a radio and I saw someone dangling above me, and I was like, okay, it's all over. We're going to be okay.
And with lots of radio communications, you've got to clip the person on and unclip them off the mountain, and then haul them all the way up, and then repeat the whole process and get them back up. And I don't think they were in good spirits, but a bit embarrassed about their situation.
We got to the point where the rope had indeed got stuck, which is why we couldn't carry it on. And it was, once I saw what we were dealing with in terms of the muddle, the rat's nest of a rope that had happened, I was like, yeah, there was no way we were getting that out. And, we had to then clean up the rope, untangle it to get past it. So we just sat there, like slowly untangling the rope, and then I coiled it and packed it away, and then we could just get hauled up the rest of the way. And I remember, I think he had like some sort of like energy drink or something. That was the sweetest tasting thing I ever tasted in a long time.
As Shannon and her rescuer inch closer to the top, feelings of shame and guilt start setting in. She's dreading having to look Gavin and the rest of the crew in the eye. Some of them have come far to get her out of a bind she had been warned she would get herself into.
I'm realizing the repercussions of what's waiting for me on the other side, and I'm very nervous and feeling very sheepish and ashamed, and I'm very scared too. I would say I wasn't feeling like, yay, we made it out. I was like very scared to face the people on the other end.
Shannon sees their injured friend who didn't come on the mission with them. After 48 hours, she and Brian are finally off the waterfall. But Shannon is not completely free yet.
The rescue rope that I had been hauled up on had gotten, because of being in a rush, it had gotten tangled up into my tether that I had. So they were like trying to strip me of all my gear and de-rig me from the setup, and it was very dramatic because they needed to cut my safety off. And, people my friends standing from afar were very confused as to why people are cutting things off of me, and it looked very dramatic.
The moment of reckoning arrives for Shannon.
There was a man who I had also been in contact with in terms of who I wanted to be called for the rescue, and I was ashamed to see him, because when I was shouting up at the man with the Instagram handles of who to contact for rescue, I told him, don't contact Mountain Rescue. Mountain Rescue cannot be the people that save us. I want to try and be a private rescue, which is a very brat thing to try and say and organize. And I used this man's name, and I said, call him. He'll know what to do, and he can rescue us. And he was the first in line in terms of the person at the edge of the cliff of the lineup who were hauling. So he was the first rescuer I saw. And I had never actually met him in person, but I knew immediately when I saw him that it was him. And he wouldn't make eye contact with me, and I was very nervous as to like, how do I approach this human and say how grateful I am and how sorry I am. But I thought I would just let it be and let it happen. And everyone was looking at me, all the rescuers, everyone was, they were looking at me trying to see, like where I was. And yeah, everyone was very quiet. There was not really a word spoken. No one said anything. Everyone was just observing and doing what they needed to do. And Gavin was standing there kind of looking at, ordering everything and managing the rescue. And I looked at him and I said, like, hi. And he just like looked at me in a kind way, but he said to me, like, tisk tisk type of thing. He said, like, don't do that again. This is the biggest mission in the country.
Gavin and his team have now successfully completed the rescue with both Brian and Shannon.
They had been sitting on a ledge, tied onto a ledge for something like 24 hours by the time we got to them. And also there was an issue about their experience. If they had have perhaps just moved a little bit, which they could have got themselves into a better position and been more comfortable, but they lacked the experience to understand how to get themselves into a better position and be able to not even be tied onto the mountain because it was flatter in an area close by. And it turned out that the lady in the party was the more experienced, but she was not really equipped technically. In her technical ability was not up to doing something like this. And the male in the party, he had in fact only abseiled once out of a tree the day before. So there's a lot of technical knowledge that just wasn't there, and that's why they got themselves stuck.
One of the friends who had been waiting for them at the top hands a famished Shannon a pepper steak pie bought at a filling station. It's cold and stale, but this means nothing to her. She wolfs it down. But the last 2 days and what they had culminated to were also a bitter pill to swallow.
So I was tired and exhausted and ashamed, and that was probably when I almost I cried properly. Like, it's just because I was feeling so ashamed and sad. But everyone was, I guess, they had like a gentle kind of energy around them, and we walked in silence. I walked at the back alone with like one of the other older members, and I looked it around, and I don't know the narrative of the side of the rescue team, but I looked around and they did want to get across to me, that people had flown from where they were to come. And I had gotten the idea that like not many people were that keen to take the call, because we were advised not to do it and we did it anyway. And I can't speak for the other side, and I haven't done much debriefing with them.
Because of the feelings Shannon associated with the event, she struggled to come to terms with how it had all unfolded. It would be some time before she would start processing what had happened on the Tugela Falls. And with hindsight, she would now also see the error of her ways and try to make amends.
It took a long time for me to actually find the right reflection, because there was so much shame based around it that I couldn't even look at it. I had GoPro footage that I couldn't even open and look at because it evoked such a trauma response in me. I would wake up, I didn't realize how traumatizing the experience was, but I used to wake up when I got home from that mission, wake up and check if I was clipped in the middle of the night. So I think it took a lot of time for me to be able to actually pick it apart and reach out to people and thank them and apologize, and also to give my reasoning of why did I do what I did. And I think my biggest, in terms of my reasoning of what happened there, was that I needed to do something that would almost put me on a map in terms of be deserving to be in the space of adventure and be taken seriously, because I was reaching out to people like, please, like, I need someone to mentor me, and no one was willing to take me on, and that was my goal. You know, I was trying to be put in a space of like, how can I actually grow in this industry? But the reflections that came after, you know, in terms of, you know, the narrative of, oh, mountain rescue is there, I think that the main part is understanding what you're asking of these people. You know, people are stopping their lives, flying out to come do this for you. But more than that, in different scenarios, like some mountain rescues are quite dangerous for the rescuer for themselves. You know, they're putting their own lives at risk to save you, and that was where it really changed for me. It became a lot less about goal orientation of, you know, summit fever and understanding when to turn back. And there's always going to be a reason of how you could have finished it or what. But if you want to like stay alive, you have to be able to do that risk management beforehand. The biggest takeaway that I took away from this was headspace, head game. It's not about all the physical things. Yes, you're physically capable. Yes, you can push yourself with 5 days no food. It's not that. I mean, of course, they start to inhibit your decision making in terms of like your brain function, but your emotional state is what's ultimately going to tell if you're going to make it or not, and if you're going to put yourself in situations because you're driven by ego or fear, or you have bad communication with your partner and you haven't told them, look, this looks like a bad idea and I'm absolutely terrified, I think we should turn back.
This podcast series, produced by the East Coast Radio Newswatch team, is dedicated to the men and women who risk everything to save lives.
To hear more of their stories, subscribe to SA Rescue Out Alive at ecr.co.za under podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.